Expert pulls up for three, boom, knocks it down.
Curry from the corner at three, puts it in.
For overtime, makes it Garrett. Right.
Welcome to the MVP cast. Once again from me, Mark Woods. Thanks so much as always for spending your time with us. Hope you're well on this big weekend for GB women and for those teams still standing in the BBL trophy. All the fun of the NBA trading deadline this past week. You don't forget, you can get my twice weekly columns on who's hot and who's not in the association with smart betting tips at Smarkets. Just search for Smarkets as S Markets betting news and head to the NBA pages. Of course, if you want to keep up to date with British basketball and everything else, you can look at MVP's social channels on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Just search for the MVP cast. Now, our guest this week is one of our biggest names, big and tall, big in stature, GB's international, who is back in the WBBL playing for the Durham Palatinates, or Palatinates, depending how you want to pronounce it, whether you're Latin speaking or not. She is the majestic Harriet Ottewill-Soulsby. Welcome to the MVP cast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You're multilingual. How do you pronounce Durham's team name?
I say Durham Palatinates.
We'll go with that, but we'll not say it again. I always think every time when I was commentating in Durham in the past, I sort of mumbled the second word and then just went with Durham for the rest of the game, which is probably the safer option. You're back in familiar terrain after you starting the season in Liège in Belgium. Of course, German top tier last year, with Germany the 2 years before that. So the obvious question: why are you back in Durham?
Why am I back? Yeah, do you know what? If you'd have asked me at the start of the season, I would never have believed you that I would end up in Durham. But unfortunately, even though Liège was a really great situation for me, they did have some money problems. A sponsor unfortunately pulled out. And it was pretty obvious from the start of the season that at some point they were going to have to make some changes just because of money stuff. And at Christmas, they unfortunately had to pull all the professionals in and just say, we can't guarantee your salary. So although I really like the coach, I really like the team, I did have to start looking at new teams. But at the same time, I'd just been looking casually at job openings and seeing that there was a job opening at Durham University as an international student recruiter, which involved a lot of traveling, which involved me also being in Durham. And I connected with Lee and asked if there was a spot for me if I ended up getting the job, and I did. So here I am.
But the good part of this is a bit of globetrotting involved still, so you're not quite confined to base.
Yeah. So my official title is International Officer for Europe, UK International Schools and Gulf countries. So I basically get to travel all over those regions recruiting students. So next week I will be in Amsterdam and then Germany. In a few weeks' time I will be in Turkey, and I also get to go to places like Oxford and Cambridge a lot in the UK. So very exciting.
I mean, it's not a hard sales pitch when you got Durham. And Durham's lovely. I've been there. I have to say, the only time I played Durham in basketball, we won. And I believe Dave Forrester, Newcastle Eagles Grandy, may have been on that team. He likes to think he was. What's the pitch to get people to come to the leafy spires of Durham?
Yeah, well, for international students in particular, they want to have a really proper traditional British experience, and Durham is that. We've got the cathedral, which they've seen in Harry Potter. We've got, the countryside with the beaches in Newcastle. We're kind of out of the hustle and bustle in London, so it's a very safe area. And of course, the university has the rankings as well. So for me, having gone here as a student, it was kind of a no-brainer, and I love being able to sell it.
For you, as someone who did your master's there and you did politics, international relations, but you also got to play basketball, and back in the days when it was a bit easier for universities to run basketball clubs as a sideline, because since then visas have changed, it gets more complicated. But what for you was the main perk of being able to do the post-grad but also play hoops?
For me, it was like I got to do all of my loves. Like, I felt like after going to college in America, I'd only just started to find my passion. So for me, being able to dive deeper into that but also get to play basketball at the, UK's number one team sport university was kind of a perfect situation for me. And what a lot of people don't know is that my dad's side of the family is from Newcastle. So it was really nice to kind of get in touch with those side of my roots, which I hadn't previously been able to.
Because your family's quite, you're a high achieving family, I think, some of the posts. But let's start with the journey. The journey started in the Netherlands. Explain the birth situation.
Well, I've got a lot to thank my mum for that. I didn't really do much myself. But yes, I was born in Holland. My dad worked for a shipping company in Holland at the time. But I actually only spent a few weeks there, and then we moved to Italy. We moved to Milan. So my formative years until I was 4 were spent in Milan, before we then moved to Germany, when my dad got a job working for a German cruise ship company. And we moved around in there. We moved to Berlin, which is where I started playing basketball. And then I moved to Loughborough. My parents moved to Italy again. And now they are actually back in Germany in the meantime. So that's been nice.
And a couple of years ago, you officially became German.
I did indeed. I never thought I would have to, because I thought England would possibly stay European. But because I had lived in Germany as a child, and because I then returned to play professional, I was eligible to get a German passport. So I am now British and German. I took a language test, and I also took a citizenship test, and passed both of those.
Make most of us feel inadequate. How many languages do you speak fluently?
I only speak 2 languages fluently. My dad, on the other hand, speaks about 6, which during COVID time, when I actually did move back in with my parents, I would wake up at 8 a.m. and my dad would be on meetings and he'd be flipping through all the different languages. But I just speak English and German fluently, and then I've got basics in like Spanish, Italian, and some French now after being in Belgium.
What was that like, that sort of slightly itinerant lifestyle as a kid? I mean, it sounds so incredibly glamorous.
Yeah, I mean, it was the norm for me. I didn't realize that people stayed in one place for more than 4 years, to be honest. But it has really set me up in life. And, the basketball lifestyle of signing a 9-month contract and then going to a different team, that is quite tough. But because we just moved so much, and because I just saw my parents, how easy it was for them to pack up and just move on, and they were able to stay in touch with people, but they were also able to easily build new connections. So that really showed me that moving is a great thing, and it can be daunting, but it's actually creating so many new and exciting opportunities. So it's really built my character, and I'm very grateful for it.
How do you, in the midst of that, the kind of flip side is being slightly rootless, in the sense of, home can be many different places, or people, in a sense.
Yeah.
And how did you find that sense of connection? I don't know if it's to family or to place, while being effectively an expat.
Yeah, honestly, that has been quite difficult, but I always say home is where my parents are. They're really great. I speak to them every day. But it is tough. Honestly, I think it was quite hard when I first moved to England, because at the time I sounded a bit more English than I do. But I grew up in British culture, but I'd never lived in England, and I didn't get a lot of the cultural references. So that was very, very odd for me. But now I just like to think that I'm European, But it's definitely a question of identity has definitely been a topic of mine for a while.
Were you more than, I suppose for all of us who felt that way, was it a bit of a knock for you? I mean, talking about getting the German passport, Brexit comes along, and suddenly it's kind of all this sort of simplicity of being European evaporated overnight. I mean, particularly for someone who's lived about the place, does it kind of feel a bit disconcerting of that, to have that break, or that loosening of those ties?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was honestly quite heartbreaking, and I did struggle with my identity then, because I'd always benefited from the European Union, and I considered myself a European citizen. So when kind of Britain, which I've always felt is more my home, despite not having lived here as long, kind of knowing that some people didn't feel that way or didn't want other people to have that connection was quite sad. But now that I do have both citizenships, I do feel like I can flip-flop and be a chameleon. But it is strange because my brothers don't actually have a German passport, so it's just myself and my parents, and that's a weird thing, your family being different nationalities.
Good thing is that you can go in a better passport queue than your brothers. So that helps,
Yeah,
at
exactly.
times. Think of the
Yeah.
perks. You're back at Durham, but it's a reunion with Lee Davey. I mean, you can't get away from the man.
I know, there's no escape for him, poor guy.
I remember like a few years ago, I was commentating on the trophy final, and that day there was a panning of the television cameras to you. You were stretching, and I gather that was something that to this day, coming back, you're still not allowed to let live down.
This is one thing that I had to talk to Lee about before I agreed to come back. I was like, Lee, you have to tell me about the warm-ups. What is going on here? Because he would always put in the most, they're not ridiculous stretches, they're probably very good for me, but with my long limbs, they were very difficult to do. And he would always tell me that I was not taking the stretching routine seriously enough. And it would be this big whole team fight or like joking around session thing. And this one time at the trophy finals, it was televised, me struggling to do inchworms with my hamstrings. But he has since taken that out of the warm-up, so no one will have to witness me trying to do that this season.
And you escape, and all is well. The
I
mind
did.
is calm.
Yes.
You've had the two seasons in Germany in the sort of lower tier. Then you get the top tier. I know, obviously, we know what a good league it is, and we know what a great setup German basketball's developed. How did that develop you more as a player? Having that consistent level of competition.
Yeah, I mean, the German league is very strong. And actually, the team that I played for in the second division, they were relegated to the second division the year that I came. And part of me coming was to get us promoted to the first division again, which we got promoted to the first division again. But then COVID rules, they decided not to let anyone go up. So every time people are like, oh, you're in a lower division, I'm like, well, the North division is not actually that low. But I did have a great time in Germany, and getting to play for my two coaches there really helped develop me. And especially because in Germany, I felt very comfortable. I felt very at home. So like the mental side of things were definitely more relaxed for me. But I played against...
Sorry, is there a style difference of German basketball?
I don't think so, but I think like a lot of the post players are very similar to me. Like it was a very good matchup. Like everyone kind of ran the floor well, moved very well, and it was less sort of like back to basket move. So I got to develop that game a lot. My face up stuff, I could do some more. But yeah, I don't think there's that much of a style thing. I think it's just in Germany, all of the teams are competitive. Like from first place to 13th, you never know who's going to win on the day, which is somewhat similar to WBBL, but there are a few gaps in the league, and in Germany that's just not the case.
How do you, when you praise it now, and you're back in this league, obviously you knew what it was like before, and things have improved. There's been some improvements around the WBBL in your absence. What's the biggest learning, do you think, now that the league is again, trying to make baby steps, but trying to make steps to improve itself? What's the biggest thing that we can learn from how it works in Germany?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's all very similar. We've got the basis of everything that we need here. I think possibly Germany is more, like as a country, they're more invested in basketball. Whereas I think the basketball community within England is very strong and very supportive. Outside of kind of the basketball community, there's not so much support. Whereas in Germany, obviously football is still the number one sport, but basketball is very close behind it. And even if you're not really a super fan, you're interested in it, you'll kind of check the scores, stuff like that. And it would just be great if in England, more people who might not be avid fans were still kind of interested. I think that would really promote the game.
Do you feel like, particularly Germany, where the sporting ecosystem is driven by local facilities, and every town has a proper facility, and it's looked after and it's nurtured in a way that increasingly we don't see in the UK. Do you feel that women's sport over there is perhaps benefits from that because there's been more of a equality of opportunity perhaps for longer?
Yeah, definitely having the facilities is good. I think that like a lot of the time in England, you do have to struggle for like court time with other sports, for example, whereas in Germany, like a lot of the time, your sports hall is just for basketball, so you don't really have to struggle for that, and you're able to, have more girls' teams or women's teams that are attached to your program, so you can develop your talent. Whereas not all teams are able to do that, just logistics wise over here.
With your own development, I mean, you left home quite early. You were 14 years of age to go, and you went to Loughborough, and this was the days before Charnwood had a sort of separate program under the riders' oversight.
Yeah.
Why so early, and what was that like?
Yeah, so I just needed something to do in the summer. I ended up going to a summer camp at Burley. It was just advertised on the internet. I ended up going, and at the end of the week, they're like, well, how would you feel about moving here? There's a boarding house attached to the school. And I was like, oh, actually, like, why not? So in the span of like 3 weeks, we suddenly decided that I was going to move from Germany to England, which was a bit crazy. But it was really cool because I'd only been playing basketball for a year at that point, and it was kind of, the deciding factor of like, okay, yes, I am going to take this seriously. I am somewhat talented at it, and this could go somewhere. So kind of going into that environment, going into a school where they trained every day, if not twice a day, was really cool. But it was also quite difficult because at the time they didn't have Charnwood. There wasn't any support for me at the boarding house. And in that sense, it was very difficult because the boarding house just didn't really understand my needs. So actually, my mum came to Loughborough and had a conversation with Matthew Harbour, who's now Matthew Pitkin. And he must have been, do you know what? He was so young. He must have been 26 at the time. And she basically said to him, if you want her to stay here, you're going to have to look after her. You're going to have to find a solution where she, is fed properly, gets her sleep, is rested. And Matt took it upon himself to change my situation, to have me, living with the uni students who were kind of looking out for me, have me training with them full time, and making sure everything with my academics was fine at the same time. So he was a really huge part of my development there.
These things can shape you, particularly at that kind of age. I mean, is it one of those situations where, that adversity does make you stronger?
Oh, 100%. I definitely had to grow up at a very young age. And that was great, not just for my basketball, but also just, life skills. And learning from the team that we had at the time. It was when the Bratka twins were there. It was when, like, Rhiannon Bailey was there. Jordan Elliott King. Like, we had such a good squad. So learning from them every day was huge and really shaped the player that I am today.
With that sort of growth, I mean, you obviously the talent was there, and you got into England under 16 team, get silver at the Euros. You got under 18, same again, silver at the Euros. Did you feel that that pathway beyond Loughborough, beyond that setup, was there? I mean, did you, because we always talk about, particularly now the GB programs, and it's great they're all back, and it's great the funding's been found. But did it feel like a seamless pathway, or did it feel like something like, well, we can pluck you out of this, or there's that disconnect at times?
I think for me, because I was at Loughborough, which is already like set up to be a high performance environment, it was pretty seamless for me, and I was very fortunate that I was part of the TAS, like talented athlete scheme, so I was like very well looked after in terms of training, weightlifting, stuff like that. So for me, I felt it was pretty seamless, but I know for a lot of people in my age group, they didn't have the luxuries that I did.
Obviously you played for GB under 20 as well. Now it's back, and we're great. You said it's great, it's coming back. What's the biggest thing you think at that age group? I mean, someone that played, a little bit at senior level, but what's the big takeaway when you get that experience, and just at that point where you're trying to turn professional, or you're looking to college or whatever it is, to your next step?
Yeah, so I think England basketball is definitely a bubble. Everyone kind of knows everyone, which is great. I love the community here. But when you go away to these international competitions, you get to play against some really top competition. You get to see how you size up against them, and you kind of get a reality check at times of how good European basketball is and the level that you need to get to compete against them. So I think that's really the most amazing thing about playing internationally is the people that you get to play against.
Do you think there's also that we kind of undervalue at times? And we look at a lot at wins and losses, and we look about player development. But I've often found when I've been covering those tournaments, I've been lucky enough to go to a lot of junior tournaments, that the life experience is possibly the biggest part of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been to places that I never thought I would ever go to through basketball. So getting to travel, getting to experience new cultures, that's a huge part of it too.
What's been your sort of method? When you hopped, Lafayette, obviously you went there to university, which is near Philly, and that's a kind of constant place. And colleges vary in terms of how much they develop you while they're looking for the wins and losses. But what was your thinking as someone who's very European and and has opportunities to live in different countries? Why go to America? Because it doesn't, in your case, seem the absolute obvious choice.
Yeah. So I think at the time when I was looking at universities, America is still the big basketball place. And although I did consider staying in England and I did consider at some point coming back, there's no other culture like the US for basketball. I mean, you can't escape it. Everyone is interested in you. Everyone cares about the record. Everyone cares about, if you beat the rival team. And that is honestly what really attracted me to go to America. And Lafayette is also a pretty high academic school too. So the fact that I could kind of still continue my academics, still continue my basketball, and just kind of get a new experience, which is so different to any of the European countries I've ever lived in, that was huge for me.
What did it teach you most about yourself, having to go far from home and again test yourself in an environment which is new and exciting but different?
Oh, I learned so many lessons in those 4 years. Honestly, I think that a lot of people will have had a similar experience with college basketball. They really push you to your limits. And I felt a lot of the time like I didn't have any control and I couldn't really say no. They would put a workout at 5 a.m. and you had to go to it. And I think now I've really learned how to listen to my body, know when to say no, know what is good for me and what isn't good for me, stuff like that, and just really take care of myself, not just on the court, but also off the court.
It's Super Bowl weekend. Yeah, I know you went to see the Eagles when you were in Philly.
Yes. I'm happy you brought this up.
What's your Super Bowl knowledge like?
Oh, I'm an Eagles fan through and through. But they won the Super Bowl the year after I graduated. I was still a fan when I went there, even though they were awful.
So will you be up late this weekend, sort of rooting against the Chiefs?
Yeah, don't tell my boss because I do have to fly out on Monday. But I will probably stay up quite late on Sunday to watch the game.
But will you flag at 1 a.m? That's the question, because generally what I do.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that my housemate she's from Florida, but her family's originally from Philly. So we realized that we're both Eagles fans, so we'll try to keep each other up. But she's also like mid-50s or so. So we'll see if we can keep each other up.
But will there be cheesesteaks?
Oh, probably not cheesesteaks, but definitely some chips and dips.
When you were in Philly, you tried all those other sports. What was was American football the favorite, or what was the big thing? I presume you will have done some Sixers games. Yeah,
I was more into the NFL stuff. The Sixers never really excited me just because they were never very good when I was there. So I didn't go to as many basketball games as I should have, especially because I have quite a few friends that work for them. But I did go to a few games. I went to some hockey games, the Flyers, which was really cool, very aggressive. And I also got very into volleyball too, men's and women's, which I didn't really know existed before I went over to America either. So that was really fun.
So give us a score prediction for Sunday.
Oh, I think it's going to be very evenly matched. I'm nervous, I can't lie. But of course, I got to go with the Eagles. Yeah, I don't know this. I don't know.
I'm going Eagles by 6. There you go.
By
Steal that if you
6?
want.
Okay.
Take that.
Yeah. I want to give them a bit more. I'll go by 14.
Okay, well, yeah. So it's only Patrick Mahomes on the other side, but that's fine.
I know. I know.
It'll be fun. Back to basketball. GB senior level. I was looking at the stats today, and obviously friendlies are never chronicled that well, but you had the one appearance at Eurobasket 15. How many games around that did you play?
I could not recall a number for you because it was quite a long ago. But I think, was that the game we played against Russia?
Yeah, so it was one appearance, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
You were only 19 at the time. And of course everyone wants to play, but I mean, what was that experience like to be at a major tournament at that age?
Yeah, it was really cool. We had a really good team that year, and the fact that I got to be around them and also play against like really good teams, or train at least against those teams, is really cool. I will say that is the one tournament that I have ever been drug tested at, and that was a whole experience in itself.
The peeing in the bucket.
Quite intimidating. Yes, I walked into this bathroom and it had mirrors everywhere. Like, it was such an intense testing facility. Like, there were mirrors on the floor, on the side, on the top. So that's my biggest memory. All that. But yeah.
Was a certain thrill of that? Because obviously, it's Russia. They're a superpower in basketball. You get the call to go on the floor. It's a short cameo. But what's going through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hectic, and I didn't expect to be called in, obviously, but you just have to kind of go in and do what you can. People aren't expecting you to do great things. You just got to focus on, setting a good screen, getting a rebound, stuff that you can control. So that's kind of what I try to focus on when I go on the court anyways.
I mean, that now it's almost 8 years ago, and you wait again. There hasn't been a GB appearance since. I mean, is there a level of disappointment that window opened and shut so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think you always want to play for your country. I'm very proud to be British and proud to have done so much at the youth team. So obviously I would love to play for GB, but I understand that at my position there's such good talent, and they've been playing so well that I just want the team to do well.
Do you hope that maybe that call might come if you play well? Because there's people retiring, as Anya Stewart calling it quits, as we understand it after this weekend. Others are in their end stage of their career, still playing incredibly well. But do you kind of hope? Do you want those conversations? Do you when a window's coming up? Do you go, maybe it's my turn?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have that conversation. But obviously now that this year I'm working anyways, I would need to have a conversation with time in advance to be able to get time off work and stuff. So I don't know, we'll see what happens. I would definitely love to have a conversation with GB, but I just wish the team all the best, and we'll be rooting for them today either way. So
there you go, Chema, if you're listening. We have someone. Just, last couple of things. I mean, you're on your travels again next week, and your Instagram is fabulous, and it's like it's cool. There you go. It's the kind of Instagram we all dream of, in terms of glamorous locations and traveling around the world. If you haven't seen it, it's Harriet OS1, and it's worth a follow. What's the favourite place?
Oh, that's a tough one. I've got very fond memories of visiting my family in Italy. They used to live in Genoa, which is like a shipping port. And it's right by like Cinque Terre, and just the food is so gorgeous, the weather's nice, and it's not really a typical tourist place. So that's definitely my favorite place that my parents have ever lived. But there's so many amazing places in Europe to go visit.
So here we are, like I can hear now, the wind is rustling outside. It's freezing cold. And now you cast us memories of summers in the Italian coast with nice food.
Yes.
It all feels so horribly far away.
I know.
The last thing we get Durham this season, let's talk, brass tacks. You guys 3-6 in the league. You're just sitting in the last playoff place. It's been a good win over Caledonia a few weeks ago. There's been a bit of up and downs with the coach. Lee was away. Matt stepped in. Now Lee's back. What do you look for now with the second half of the season approaching?
Yeah, well, I think that the girls have done such an amazing job kind of handling the situations that have been thrown at them, and I think right now it's just about enjoying playing together and enjoying everything they've achieved so far. And if we're having fun, we're going to win. The team chemistry is there. We're working hard. And we're just focused on kind of sealing our spot and showing that Durham is a good team in the league, and we shouldn't be sitting where we are. And we're excited to kind of play out. We've still got quite a few games left, so hoping to kind of build upon the momentum that we currently have.
Is that a nice little battle? Because we look at probably the top 5 are going to be the top 5, but below that, everyone's within 5 games of one another. It's all up for grabs. And I know we talk about the team that's going to win the league, and we know that that's going to be probably another unbeaten season. But there is a good little scrap at the bottom end that everyone can kind of watch and with fascination.
Oh yeah, I mean, we have a really big month ahead of us. So we're just excited to keep working hard and focusing on what we need to do and trying to get a few more wins. But yeah, it should be an interesting league, and it's kind of everything is still sort of up in the air with where people are going to end up placing, which is quite fun to watch.
Well, it's always good. Next weekend you've got Cardiff at home, February 18th, 1 o'clock. If you're in the vicinity of Durham, be there. If you're an international student and you want to watch basketball, there's a great place to go, northeast of England. Harriet will welcome you there with open arms. Harriet, always a pleasure. Enjoy the travels, enjoy the hoops, and enjoy life, and enjoy Super Bowl.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us. That is it for this edition of the MVP Cast. Don't forget you can get all our previous editions at our website at mvp247.com, or you can head to your favourite podcast provider, or you can ask your smart device. There's many of those available. Pick whichever one you choose. If you want to get in touch with me, and we're always glad to hear from you, you can get me on Twitter at Mark Bripple. But another edition of the podcast coming very, very soon from me, Mark Woods. Thank you as always for listening, and it's goodbye.